Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever it is where you are and when you're watching this. This is in case you missed American history for Thursday, January 14th. It's right on the slide in front of me. Oh my God, I'm having a morning. Thursday, January 14th. If you're watching this, that means that you probably missed class, and that's okay. I hope that you are doing very, very well, and I hope the people around you are doing well, and I hope that you're wrapping up the quarter semester strong. I hope that you're in a good spot in all your classes. And if you're not, I hope that you're taking the steps to get things where they need to be by the end. And if that means you got some stuff that you owe me and some things you need to do for me, let's get those things taken care of. If you need my help, please ask. Okay. So reminders before we get into the three slides that we need to look at today. A couple of them are really quick and very related. Is that any late work, like Seeking Empire that was due last Friday, or the U.S. versus the Sioux tribe that was due a month and a half ago, or your tic-tac-toe projects, any of that stuff is due by Friday at midnight. Now, special circumstances, if you are not done with things and you need more time, you can have until Sunday, but you got to email me. You got to advocate for yourself. You got to ask. If I don't get a lot of those things, some of you guys obviously are aware that if you don't get the credit, you need to retake the class. We don't want that. So please make sure you're doing your things. Also, if you want to resubmit things for a higher score, you want to go in and use the feedback to fix something, do a little bit better on it, get your overall score in the class higher, you are more than welcome to do that. That stuff is due by Friday at midnight too. Okay. Make sure you're checking your grades in all your classes. I don't know how up to date everything is for all your classes. I'd go 98% accurate in here. Okay. I'm working on entering the last couple Seeking Empires, but other than that, grades are where they are right now. And, you can still submit things to get those up. Today we're going to have our last day of discussion. Some of you guys are going to have me again next week, but some of you guys aren't going to have to listen to me talk anymore until March. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Maybe you like listening to me blather on about history and making myself sound stupid. Either way, it's our last day of notes because we're going to have a test tomorrow. So please make sure you get to class tomorrow. I'm going to share out the link for the test. You guys will be able to take that. When you're done, you're done. It'll be due by midnight tomorrow night, and that is going to be the last grade in the grade book. You want to make sure you're here to take that test. It would be bad if you didn't. You will be able to use your notes, and obviously I'll be here to help too. So without any further ado, let's get into these last three slides for the semester. So first thing we're going to talk about today, if I can get it to click on there, is the Spanish-American War. So in 1898, the United States got involved in a very brief 90 days, as a matter of fact, war with Spain over Cuban independence. Now, if you're wondering why the United States got involved in a war with Spain over Cuba, that's a great question. It wasn't that we wanted to take over Cuba. The last couple of things, we talked about, we found Midway Island, we scared the Japanese into letting us kind of bully them around. We bought Alaska, we stole Hawaii. We didn't actually take Cuba. We were interested in them because they reminded us a lot of us when the British were in control of the United States. And so we saw in them a country of people that wanted freedom. And we saw an oppressive European king taking advantage of them. I'm not going to lie. We also saw a place that had a lot of sugar, and we were interested in having a really favorable trade agreement with them. Over the course of the time leading up to the war and the war, there was a strong United States feeling that this was important, that this not only was it an important thing that we do this, but it was an important win for us because it gave us a victory against a major European power. Now, Spain might have been on the downslide of their power in the world, but it's still, you beat a tough guy, even if he is a little old. It still makes you look like a little bit of a tough guy. Now, the war itself is weird. More people die from mosquito bites. They get malaria, which causes a big fever and dehydration and diarrhea, and you die from that kind of stuff. More people died from malaria than from bullet wounds or battle wounds. So it's an odd war. Like I said, only 90 days or so, and more death from disease than from bullets. That's odd. You won't find that in any of the wars we talk about the rest of the year in second semester. Okay. Now, long story short, obviously we believe that the Spaniards were mistreating the Cubans. And so we made several appeals to the Spaniards to treat the Cubans better or to give them independence. Throughout all of this, the newspapers covered this incredibly hard. And the way that they did it is they used a type of journalism called yellow journalism. Now, yellow journalism is where a news outlet takes a small story and starts to add details to it to make it seem like a bigger and bigger issue. Those details aren't necessarily true. They can be twisted to make a point. They can be twisted to get readers to buy the story. Usually yellow journalism, the intention is to get more people to buy your paper because your stories are emotional and they make people interested in the news. You could make the case that a lot of things that go on today by a number of different news outlets involve some amount of yellow journalism. That really got the average person involved, and given the political slant of the articles, they thought Spain was mistreating these Cubans. And these Cubans did want their independence. They were fighting for their independence. They had rebelled several times with no success. They really needed help. And American people who read these articles were willing to give that help. The second major reason or the other major reason we get involved is the explosion of a Navy boat called the USS Maine. Now, the USS Maine was sent by the United States to sit in Cuba in Havana Harbor. Havana is the capital. And it was there to kind of just be an American presence, but also because there were a number of Americans who owned businesses in Cuba. So they were looking out for American interests around the world. For most of the Maine stay, it was uneventful. Nothing happened. It was boring. The sailors that were on board the boat were bored. They never left the boat. The leadership went to formal get-togethers and we're like, this is pointless. This is just dumb. On the night of February 15th, 1898, in not quite the middle of the night, but most of the people on board the ship were asleep, the ship exploded, killing almost everybody on board and causing a general ruckus in the United States. Because even though we didn't have any real information, the next day newspapers printed that Spain blew up the USS Maine. They even had artists draw like illustrations of this where the boat was exploding and there was a Spaniard in a sombrero, talk about like a racist depiction, with one of those dynamite boxes like you would have saw in like a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon. And Americans got up, and while they were eating their breakfast, they opened the newspaper and they're like, oh my God, the Spaniards killed American sailors. They blew up our boat. We have to go to war. We need to free Cuba. Cuba Libre. Remember the Maine. Let's go. And the United States gave Cuba one last ultimatum is the word, or you do this or else is what ultimatum means. You do this or else. You clean your room or you can't go out with your friends. You get good grades or we shut off your cell phone. That's an ultimatum. In this case, it was you free Cuba or we declare war on you. Spain's like, we can't get rid of them. They're our last colonial possession. We get a lot of money selling their sugar. We're going to have to fight you. We don't want to fight you. This is like a reluctant war, okay? And like I said, the war lasts for 90 days. Really, the big heroes of the war, the big moments of the war come from a group of people called the Rough Riders. They were a group of hand-picked soldiers brought to you by a guy named Teddy Roosevelt. He was a rich politician who quit politics to be involved in the Spanish-American War. He wanted to be a hero. He wanted to be involved, but he also thought America expanding was the right thing to do. He thought this war was a really good idea and the right thing to do. And Teddy Roosevelt, being famous and hand-picking these college athletes, cowboys, natives, socialites, that would be rich people, from New York City, obviously drew a press following. And so even though they probably didn't fight any better than any other group of American soldiers, they had a constant press coverage. And they were involved in the major battles of the war, and they performed very, very well alongside another group of soldiers called the Buffalo Soldiers. Buffalo Soldiers were the all-black regiment that fought in the Spanish-American War. They were led by a guy named John Pershing, who was white. Pershing will come up again a little bit later in the class in World War I. But they became the big heroes of the war, the face of the war. The newspapers loved them. Okay, the photographers loved them. Like I said, we won the war in 90 days. It was a positive outcome for us. We come out looking like this country that's finally come of age. We have a military to be reckoned with. We have a navy to be reckoned with. And in the treaty, which we'll talk about on the next slide, we made major gains. Okay? All right, the treaty. It's a major win for imperialists, people that wanted to add to the size of the country. The Treaty of Paris, and God, don't Google this. There's so many Treaty of Parises. Use this slide. our agreement was Cuba becomes independent first and foremost, and they become another one of our BFFs in the world. Very one-sided relationship. We'll take your sugar in trade. We'll pay you for it, but you better not tax it. We'll buy your stuff. We want to park businesses in your country. We want to put Navy boats in your country. And by the way, if you need us, we're there, but don't try and take advantage of us because we're not going to do it. We also were awarded Guam, Puerto Rico. Guam is an island in the Pacific. Puerto Rico is a small island very near Cuba that we actually still own today. And the Philippines, an island chain in the Pacific, not too far away from like China and Japan. Now, there was some argument about this because people didn't understand how we could fight to free Cuba, but then take over other places. Again, it seemed kind of hypocritical. Hypocritical people say one thing, do another. Okay, I'm not going to say they're two-faced, but they say you can't have food and drink in my classroom, but then they're eating and drinking during class. It's not okay. And some of the places like the Philippines fought. They were like, we want our independence too, and they fought against us when we showed up, but we were able to put down their rebellion. And so again, we fight a 90-day war, and we gain a lot of territorial claims, and we gain prestige or political power around the world. All right. Now, wrapping things up, some odds and ends from this unit that we didn't talk about yet. One thing that's also going on toward the end of this unit is we are scouting out and building the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal allows us to connect the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean together. It is going to reduce travel time. We used to have to leave New York, travel all the way around the tip of South America, and come back up to California to take things by boat. This is going to cut that travel time by months. Okay. The building is going to be difficult. Again, we're dealing with malaria mosquitoes. We're dealing with a tough construction across the country of Panama where we're going to have to dig, create man-made lakes, have locks, which are like water elevators. Boat pulls in, it floods, raises the boat up, boat pulls in, floods, raises it up. Then it's in the man-made river, man-made lake. And then we have to drop it back down using locks into the other ocean. Some of the big bonuses, obviously, it reduces travel time. It allows us to have one Navy, one U.S. Navy, instead of a U.S. Atlantic Navy and a U.S. Pacific Navy. And it is also going to be something that is going to increase and make world trade easier for not just us, but for everyone around the globe. The last big idea is the idea of diplomacy, or how countries get along with each other. I wanted to throw out some of the ways that we did business with other countries, not just in our part of the world, but other parts of the world as well. All right, one way that you can do business is dollar diplomacy. Now, your family uses dollar diplomacy on you probably a lot. Dollar diplomacy is where you use money to get people to do what you want them to do. So, for instance, at your house, you may ask for $20 to do something with a friend, or $20 to buy something off Amazon, or $20 to go grab some food at Jimmy John's or whatever. And in your family, maybe they hand you 10, maybe they hand you 20, maybe they don't. But if they hand you money, maybe the next morning they knock on your door at 7 a.m. and go, hey, get up. We're cleaning the garage. And you're like, oh, I don't want to get up yet. And they're like, oh, you remember that 20 I gave you yesterday? Want that back then. And then you got to get up and clean the garage. Or they do things like, hey, we pay your cell phone bill. Or hey, who feeds you? Or who took you on vacation last year? They're using the idea of money against you. And so what the United States did and still does a lot is we are famous for giving people money help when they need it. There's an earthquake in Mexico. A bridge needs to be built in Brazil. And we go, hey, you don't have the money for it? We're more than willing to give you that money. We'll lend you the money. And then 6 months later, a year later, we go, hey, we'd like to put some missiles in your country, or park some boats in your country, or we need to have a special trade agreement with you. And when the country says, well, we really don't want to do that, we're like, hey, we'd like that money we lent you back. You got that? Oh, you don't? We'll send the boats down to park. We'll ship the missiles that way. We'll do this, we'll do that. And so you're using money as a motivating factor. The next kind of diplomacy that's often used by the U.S. and other countries around the world is called gunboat or big stick diplomacy. And this is where you use the threat of force. Teddy Roosevelt, you had this saying that was walk softly and carry a big stick. Okay, I always say it is like, be nice until it's time to not be nice. And so what you do is I may walk around the room with a yardstick on my shoulder, act like I'm swinging a baseball bat, swinging a golf club. And we're all working on something in the room. And when I walk by you, you're not working. And I go, hey, I appreciate that you're playing a game on your computer, but it's really time to get to work. Be nice, okay? Second time I walk around the room talking to everybody, you're still playing the game. And I go, hey, man, really appreciate it if you get to work. I really want you to pass the class. You're a really smart person. You have tons to offer. And I walk around the room a third time and you're still playing the game. And so wham, I hit you with the stick and go, get to work. So use the threat of force and then use that force if you have to get people to do what you want them to do. Now, you can say that you're being a bully. I don't know that I can argue with that too much. But you're definitely using that threat of force. Last but not least, the Roosevelt corollary. The Roosevelt corollary was a different kind of diplomacy. We basically said, hey, world, we're the big brother to everybody in the Western Hemisphere. If they have a debt that they owe you, we'll pay it. If they have a problem, we'll help take care of it. Now, if you're wondering, that's pretty nice of us, man. We're paying people's debts, we're taking care of their problems, but then we have them in our back pocket. We've got the, hey, you owe us. We solved this problem you had with England. Hey, you owe us. We paid this debt you had to China. Hey, you owe us. We did this for you. And so the Roosevelt corollary is a way for us to help make sure that there's not external problems in our part of the world, but it's also a way for us to influence the countries that are around us. Okay. When it comes to final outcomes, the main thing I want you guys to get out of this unit is we went from being this isolated little country that just kind of did its little business to kind of a global country. I wouldn't call us a world power yet. We don't really get there until World War I. I'd give us World War I by 1918. By the second week in February, we'll be a world power. How about that in our class? Okay. But this is definitely making the move. People around the world are paying attention to us. We went from being a little kid to we're like a kind of an influential and important teenager that people respect and that people have got their eye on. They go, that kid's got potential. Okay. Now that's it. If you got all that, you're in good shape. Make sure you're ready to rock. And we'll see you soon. If you have questions, please let me know.